Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our first diversity town hall meeting today. And it should be a great hour here or more. And so we're looking forward to all the discussions that we're going to have. This is our first diversity town hall presented by the Raleigh Association of Realtors. And it's the first in a series of discussions that are not only necessary, but are vital to the health of our industry as well as to our community. And I want to pause here just and quickly acknowledge those that are here from the leadership team. And want to acknowledge that President Lewis Grubbs is on the call, President-elect Brett Bushnell, Secretary Treasurer Leslie Williams, and immediate past president is Renee Smith. So I wanted to give a shout out to them and thank you for joining the call. As we go through, we will acknowledge our panelists as we go forward here. I just want to give a quick introduction and then leave that to Lewis here. But I want to say a couple of words here that today we're here from a number of local and national leaders, individuals who are providing valuable insights to our future together. Our association was chartered nearly 100 years ago in 1924 and has seen its share of changes. And for an entity to remain viable, fair, and reputable, a commitment to progressive change must be ingrained in the organization's DNA to survive and thrive. Like growth rings on the tree, during the rainy seasons, we see the most expansions. These storms may bring the most stress on the tree's roots and bark, but what emerges the following year results from more leaves, more flowers, and sustained life for the tree. Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors is growing from the roots up, cultivating the voices of our members and listening to what we need to plant today for a more successful and inclusive tomorrow. Difficult decisions allow us to, quite literally, weed out our inequities and biases. Today is the first in many steps towards tending to our garden. We as an industry and as people reap what we sow. We've historically been a part of many of these equality issues and problems, but we have a hope and desire for all of us to be part of the many solutions to come. So with that said, as a preamble to our discussions, I'd like to turn it over to Lewis.
Thank you, Larry, and it's great to see everybody here today. Thank you to our guests, our panelists for being here with us today. In addition to our town hall meeting, we will be conducting our second diversity discussion on July 23rd at noon. Not only do we hope you will join us that day, we hope that you will have your voice heard and help our industry by visiting www.rrar.com/together. There you will find an online form for any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. You can choose to remain anonymous, as all questions and comments will be answered and addressed during our next town hall as well. Today, we'll be learning and hearing from a distinguished panel of guests: NAR President Vince Malta, NAREB President Donnell Williams, NCR and RRAR past President Asa Fleming, and Sobha, Associate Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for YMCA of the Triangle. After we hear from our speakers, we will be answering some questions that came in online over the past few weeks, as well as questions from our audience today. Feel free to utilize the question and answer feature on our Zoom webinar today. You will once again remain anonymous with only your question asked and not the user who submitted it. While we work to get every question asked or answered, know that our time on the air is limited, but all questions will be forwarded to our leadership team and either addressed one-on-one with you or during our next town hall event. We are all committed to meaningful progress here. We remind people that in order to achieve change, we have to be the change. We are all allies here working together, so let's all commit to treating one another with dignity and respect. With that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. and also give a brief overview of the meeting's course today. After our panelists are introduced with a brief bio, we will ask each of them to provide a brief statement on, in their respective field, what's happening within our industry as it relates to diversity and inclusion, as that's the topic of our discussion today and how we can improve. We will then answer some questions that have been presented to the group, and thereafter answer questions that come in from the audience via the question and answer feature. We want to have as many people as possible participate in today's event. So we would ask that you limit your questions to one at a time so that more people may be able to participate and ask questions and therefore receive answers. So thank you for being here today. And I would like to start with NAR President Vince Malta. Vince Malta is the 2020 President of the National Association of Realtors. Vince is a third-generation realtor and the CEO and broker of Malta and Company Incorporated in San Francisco. Vince has been in the real estate business for 43 years and has served the industry in countless roles, including serving as a California Realtors President in 2006 and was named the State of California's Realtor of the Year in 2007. Welcome, President Malta.
Thank you, and hello from California. It's great to be with our fellow realtors in Raleigh, even if it's virtually. I wouldn't miss the chance to participate in this important town hall on diversity. Diversity has become one of our strengths at NAR, but talking about what makes us diverse and having honest conversations about race is often difficult. Today's event is a chance for everyone to share their thoughts. More importantly, it's a chance to listen, learn, and understand that while we all have different stories, we share similar hopes and dreams. We may not all look the same, but we all want to move in the same direction toward thriving, prosperous communities for us and for our children. So thank you for kicking off these important conversations. I believe that as leaders in our communities, America's 1.4 million realtors are active participants in promoting equality, inclusion, and acceptance, and you're proving that today. Both NAR and Raleigh Association have been working to actively promote diversity and fight discrimination for years. But the issue has rocketed to the front pages over the past few weeks after the horrific killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. We at NAR share the pain and outrage felt by millions of Americans in this historic moment. And NAR is dedicated to fighting for policies that address racial injustice and build safe, inclusive spaces for all, particularly African Americans who faced centuries of institutionalized racism and discrimination. And we stand together, shoulder to shoulder, with millions of Americans in affirming that Black lives matter. As a third-generation realtor from San Francisco, it's important to me that equality, inclusion, and acceptance are among our most cherished realtor ideals. Tearing down the legacy of racism in housing and working towards housing equality and affordability is one of the central strategic priorities of my presidency. Let me share a few ways we're working to address that. NAR reorganized last summer to create a new Fair Housing Committee so NAR could more effectively advocate on national fair housing policy. As part of that reorganization, we hired a new director of fair housing policy who's just incredible. Brian Green served at the Department of Housing and Urban Development for over 30 years and was the top career official overseeing enforcement of the Federal Fair Housing Act. He's brought that experience to NAR and is taking the lead on new fair housing initiatives. For instance, in January this year, the NAR leadership team passed a Fair Housing Action Plan called ACT, A-C-T, which stands for Accountability, Culture Change, and Training. Among other proactive steps, this plan calls on us to create minimum core fair housing training requirements for all states and develop a model state licensing law to make sure real estate agents who violate fair housing laws are held accountable. We must ensure America's 1.4 million realtors are doing everything possible to protect housing rights in America. And for NAR members, we have a couple of ways you can take action right now. First, I invite you to watch NAR's new video on implicit bias. The strategies it presents can help all realtors override bias to convey respect, ensure fairness, and improve business relationships. You can find the video and an online implicit bias test at nar.realtor/fair-housing. Again, that's nar.realtor/fair-housing. Second, you can apply for NAR's new Community Rebuilding Grant, which provides special funding for realtor associations to help rebuild communities affected by racial injustice demonstrations. Associations can apply for grants up to $3,000 to clean up and repair community spaces, such as parks and plazas. Applications must be submitted by October the 15th. There are also fair housing grants, housing opportunity grants to expand housing access to affordable housing, and diversity grants to improve diversity in association leadership and collaborate with multicultural organizations. More information is available for those grants at realtorparty.realtor. And this is so important because while we can apply for these grants, we can come together as a community and have these conversations amongst our members and those we can collaborate to make sure we're doing whatever we can do as a community to stamp out discrimination. And finally, because the issue of housing equality and affordability is too big for one association to tackle on its own, we have joined with strategic partners to expand the scope of our efforts. NAR just announced a partnership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Equality of Opportunity Initiative as part of a broad national effort to examine economic inequality and advance economic inclusion in America. We're teaming up with leaders and builders to amplify our advocacy voice and broaden housing opportunities for underserved communities. NAR is also cooperating with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB, and the Urban Institute to address the low rate of African American homeownership decimated by the recent recession. I know my friend Donnell Williams, president of NAREB, is on the call and will be speaking soon, and I look forward to that. And I want to thank him for his leadership on this issue and for bringing our two organizations together. NAR has also joined with the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and the Asian Real Estate Association of America. Creating synergy and trust among these organizations will enhance the influence and ability of our collective group to bring about the positive change we so need. I understand that the Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors has a long history of celebrating diversity as well. Many state and local associations do not even have a diversity committee. You do, and yours is thriving. Thank you for that. The Raleigh Diversity Committee promotes participation with the association and facilitates networking. It's working to facilitate implicit bias training for area brokers and owners. And it takes the initiative to launch 3 educational programs a year designed to transform the way members think about diversity. RRAR has also won NAR's Platinum Global Achievement Program Award for the last 2 years in a row, placing you in the top 10% of global councils nationwide. Thanks to your success in becoming the official ambassador association to NAR India, you're providing realtors with the tools they need to excel in international real estate and connecting members to the global opportunities of the local market. I know that good things are happening on the state level too. North Carolina realtors have had tremendous success with the Mosaic initiative. Through Mosaic, NC Realtors is highlighting the diversity of its members, showcasing its commitment to the Realtor Code of Ethics, encouraging discussions on diversity, and bringing people together to be ambassadors of social change. It couldn't have happened without the leadership of my friend Asa Fleming, a past president of both the Raleigh and North Carolina associations. I know Asa is on the call and will be speaking soon. as well. So thank you, Asa. We appreciate all that you do and are doing. So far we've talked about the important work we're doing to fight discrimination at the national, state, and local level. We've made significant progress, but we have a long way to go. So when members ask me, what can they do? Well, what we all can do is to help rebuild communities and affect change. And here's what I tell them. We can begin by encouraging brokers to start conversations with their staff. We need to be listening, learning, and working with others as we find the answers together to help our communities and make sure that we're doing our part to provide fair housing. Realtors must be part of the solution. As local leaders, our responsibility is to create strong communities that provide equality, inclusion, and acceptance. Fortunately, that is already ingrained what we do in our daily lives and how we run our business. And we at NAR welcome your input and thoughts on how we can improve our communities together. Again, NAR offers many resources to help your association. Go to the website that I asked you to do earlier, nar.realtors/fair-housing. There you're going to find educational opportunities, our fair housing toolkits, our videos on how to override bias in fair housing, and much more. We should also convene more events like this one to bring people together to talk about the problems that divide us. We encourage realtors of all backgrounds to lead with an open mind. Remember, our goal is to listen, learn, and work together to find solutions. And finally, I believe it's our imperative for realtors to be leaders of change on this issue. We have a special responsibility to do so, given the legacy of housing discrimination in America. Realtors have been on the wrong side of history before. From 1924 to 1950, Article 34 of the Realtor Code of Ethics read, "A realtor should never be instrumental introducing into a neighborhood members of any race or nationality or any individual whose presence will clearly be detrimental to property values in that neighborhood." Well, into the 1960s, many realtors were complicit in the odious practices of redlining and enforcing racial covenants. But we were able to change because of realtors like you. I know a realtor whose family came to America from Cuba in the late 1960s. Her family escaped the Cuban communist regime only to struggle for months to find housing because of discrimination in their new home. As a young girl, the difficulties her family faced finding a home left a lasting impact on her. Today, Mabel Guzman is an NAR vice president and proud to be part of an industry committed to breaking down barriers and helping everyone feel at home wherever they are. I'll bet there are more realtors in North Carolina, California, or somewhere in between who have a similar story. Realtors are passionate about fair and equal housing, not just because it's the law, but also because it's the right thing to do. Access to affordable housing raises education scores for kids, economic mobilities for families, it fosters community engagement, and it brings a strong, sustainable, growing economy for everyone. All of us, as leaders in our industry, have the opportunity to be part of this healing and transformation. So let's get to work. I've met thousands of realtors across the country in my time on the NAR leadership team, and I've heard them time and time again. They want to foster diversity and bring about change. My faith in realtors and in our country tells me that we will succeed in moving past the legacy of discrimination and creating safe, inclusive communities where everyone can live. We can, we must, and we will, because that's who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, President Malta. We also have with us today Mr. Donnell Williams. Donnell Williams is broker of record and owner of Destiny Realty in Morristown, New Jersey, with a branch office in Newark, and serves as the 2020 president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. His company, Destiny Realty, is one of the largest African-American independently owned real estate brokerages in the state of New Jersey. A longtime member of NAREB, Mr. Williams has been actively involved in the trade association's effort to promote the meaningful exchange of ideas about the real estate business and how to best serve its clientele. Mr. Williams also holds membership in New Jersey $1 Million Club and holds certifications as well as a real estate manager and housing counselor. He currently serves as the chairman of the board of the New Jersey Association of Minority Real Estate Professionals. Welcome, Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grubbs. I appreciate that, and good to see my friend Vince there. Just want to say greetings to everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation. I am excited to be here with you all, and even more excited to talk about diversity and how it affects Black lives all across the country, and how it affects our industry more importantly. One correction, though, I am president until 2022. But this is what we are doing over at NAREB. We were founded in 1947 out of a need for fair housing, and our mantra is democracy in housing. We have about a little over 100 chapters across the country. We are concerned about the current events going on in the country. We are active participants. We will fight economically and politically to leverage things. And when NAREB wins, when the Realtors organization wins, the whole country wins. We fought for so many different things, testified before Congress so many times to come out, the country to come out far better. Just case in point, really quickly, the first look period. First look period, so that first-time home buyers actually got a chance to purchase some properties that were foreclosed on through the GSEs, where they would give the first 20-day period to first-time home buyers, and investors couldn't come and sweep up those properties. But there's been so many fights, so many victories over the 73 years of our existence. Currently, we are concerned about a few things. We're concerned about a few bills that are out there, a few pieces of legislation. We're concerned about the 1.7 million Black millennials that make over $100,000 a year that do not own a home. We're concerned about the average age of an African American who purchases a home at 48 years old, according to the Freddie Mac study. We're concerned about credit and decreasing debts and increasing deeds. We are moving aggressively with a new program that I developed that seems to be sweeping the country with House in the Car. We are developing our auction site. We have connected the dots with our civic engagement partners through the Realtors Referral Network. We are very excited. We also have Rosie, real estate opportunities for seasoned individuals, because if we're at 48 years old on an average across the country, then we have to learn some different tricks. We need to learn about insurance, wills, probate, trust. So we are moving aggressive. We are being extremely aggressive and increasing Black home ownership. Black home ownership prior to me taking office was 40.6. I put the next quarter went up to 42.7, an increase. The next 2 quarters right now, and that was August 2019, right now we're hovering at 44%. We came up 3.1 points over the past 9 months or so, but we're excited about the increase, but we're not finished. We're not finished. We're just getting started. We're looking for, I understand that this is a war. Okay, we understand that, but we have to have partners to win the war. And we're looking for partners locally, statewide, and federally to help us win this war. So I thank you so much for your time. There's so much more I could talk about, but I do have another call that I need to be on, so I will digress and let you all have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, President Williams. Will you be back with us?
When I leave, I will not. I have interviews all day up until 5 o'clock.
Well, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
We also have with us today Asa Fleming. Asa is an active member of Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors, the North Carolina Association of Realtors, and the National Association. Asa is an active member of the Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors, the North Carolina Association of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors, where he has served on multiple committees. Asa is a past president, was named the 2016 Realtor of the Year for Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors. He is currently the immediate past president of NC Realtors, and Asa was honored to be a member of the 2014 National Association of Realtors Leadership Academy class and served as the 2017 chair of the Leadership Academy Advisory Group. He is also active in a variety of local organizations, including the Carrying Place, Southeast Raleigh Promise, and Rebuilding Together of the Triangle. I present Past President Asa Fleming.
Thank you, Louis, and it's so honored to be on this panel with such prestigious speakers. It's good to see you, Vince, and it's just a good array of people you have speaking here. Diversity was something I've always been involved with. When I first got to Raleigh, North Carolina in 2002, I immediately got engaged with the association. I had been taught that getting engaged with the association was a way to keep yourself abreast of what was the trends and what was the best practices and learning and takeaways. But, as I got involved, I didn't see a lot of diversity there. And I know as being involved, you start getting involved in committees, you didn't see a lot of diversity. And so I was in the inaugural Leadership Academy, you were taught to lead. We had a leadership academy called the Triangle Realtor Leadership Academy that the locals had put on to try to, engage younger leaders and get us involved. So my thing I took on was diversity. Once I got up to where I was on the board and I was getting to where I was going to be president-elect, I decided I wanted to start a diversity committee at the local board, at the Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors. I had been chairing the state diversity committee, but was very, kind of embarrassed that we didn't have one here locally, and we were the capital city of this state. And so we saw that we had a standing committee on the bylaws that wasn't enacted. We enacted it, renamed it Diversity Committee. All of the board of directors voted to have this diversity committee. And now, as you heard, Vince say, it's one of the highly, attended committees at the board, plays a very good part in attracting people and making sure that they see that they have a place at the board. So if they don't have a fit or they don't know too much about it, that committee is also serving not only as an educational for our members, but also for a way to engage the board, kind of find out what committees are about by just getting engaged at the diversity committee. And then maybe they find out they're interested in politics and they ended up on the government affairs committee. But it was a way for them to get in and get involved. And this was what we were proud of. At the state level, last year, was fortunate to be serve as the president of NC Realtors. And, when I was the chair, I actually chaired the state committee, the diversity committee, for 2 years in a row. And I wanted to kind of have what we would call this uncomfortable conversation. So we're always educating people on sensitivity and, different cultural aspects, but we never really addressed the implicit bias and had the actual uncomfortable conversation. And so just, talking to Carrie Epps-Rashad, who was staff liaison to the committee at NC Realtors, and Shailene Young, kind of laid out what I wanted to do. I wanted people to get into a room of all diverse backgrounds, interests, and then be facilitated in a discussion and have the hard conversation. And these ladies did a phenomenal job putting this together, the way it came out. Just some quick highlights in closing here of that was, we had the diversity conference. It was called the Mosaic. I was fortunate to have Fred Underwood there from NAR to witness it. And, we started off with a moving speech by the Charlotte Association's president, who was an African-American female, the first African-American female ever elected there. And she gave a moving speech about what we should be doing in this industry, engaging our clients, our customers, and our community. And then what went from there was, then it got a little interesting. So now we had people sharing what kind of biases they felt have come toward them, type of discrimination they faced. We had a moving
moving presentation by Michael Fosberg, who leads this play called Incognito, where he realizes at the age of 34, when his parents get divorced, that he actually has an African-American dad and a whole rich African-American heritage in Virginia. And so it was like, you wake up one morning and realize that, you find out that you're African-American and you're raised as a Swedish Armenian for all those years. And so he talked about those cultural biases he had, he didn't realize he had, what he learned about it, and he shared that with the group. The most powerful one was, when we had a Stewart, engineering guy, Willie Stewart, come and lead a presentation about who you are and what the biases are and who you are not, and really started facing, where people really got engaged with this one. I mean, and this is where it got a little uncomfortable. You had people that would say things and, they would say, I am something and I am not this. So, to give you an example, you had a gay guy who would stand up and he'd say, I am a gay male, right? But I am not a drag queen. You would get someone like that would stand up and say, hey, I'm a black man, but I'm not a minority. As that, that word has the minute, the root word is minor, less than, right? So you had, a lot of different people that would say those type of things, and then we would discuss it. And, sometimes you can tell people really enjoyed it. You were having this discussion and speaking about it and learning. And then you could also tell, which was interesting, that some people were very uncomfortable having that conversation. And then after it ended, we had a wine and cheese after it. Instead of the people going, oh my God, that was weird, and leaving, it was amazing to see how everyone kind of just stayed, for not just a few minutes, an hour, just talking about the different things amongst each other. People that had kind of disagreed were talking. It was just something to watch. So I like the fact that we are able to have the hard conversation, and I hope and pray that this continues, and I applaud our association for putting on something like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Asa. Glad to have you with us today. We also have with us today Sobha. Yo currently serves as the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the YMCA of the Triangle. Yo has served in several capacities in the YMCA family through the years, most recently as the Executive Director of Association Programs, but enjoys his work now building and cultivating strategic relationships, partnerships, alliances, and collaborations that strengthen the recruitment and retention of underrepresented populations. He is a graduate of NC State with a degree in communications and psychology. The WISE mission statement is to embrace, reflect, and celebrate the richness of diversity within each other and the many communities we serve. We are grateful for his time today to share a little about what he and the YMCA does here in the RDE area. Welcome, Yo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so glad to be here today and amongst such an impressive group of people as well as panelists. So I am not the realtor in the group. So I am with the YMCA of the Triangle, and our mission at the Y is to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. Two really, really important words at the end of that, of for all. And as we do that, Lewis just referenced, our mission guides us in all we do and compels us to embrace, reflect, and celebrate the richness of diversity within each other and our community. We invite, welcome, and involve everyone to work side by side with us to further our cause. And our cause is around strengthening the foundations of community. So I think this is why we're here today, is because our cause at the YMCA is about being for all, and our cause, our mission is to be for all, and our cause is talking about strengthening those foundations of community, and we do that together in partnership, right? Our YMCA is working internally and externally to be a convener and create brave, welcoming spaces, and brave different than safe, right? Safe may mean that we don't talk about those tough conversations that are happening, those tough things in society that are happening. We may skip those if it's too safe, right? But we want to be brave in our space. We want to create a welcoming space that is brave so people can have those tough, critical conversations about race, race equity, our current realities that are going on, how people are even feeling within these within the realities. Our YMCA is engaging communities from elementary all the way to active older adults within this conversation as well. Last week we had a conversation with about 70 teens to talk about race and race equity and what they're feeling because of the situations and the violence that's been happening in our communities. It was an amazing conversation, but it was only the start. As many of you have, our fellow panelists have mentioned, this is only the start of things as well. I said we are a convener. One of our goals is to bring people together so that we can listen first, right? So that we can learn from each other. When we start listening to each other's perspectives and where each other is coming from, then we have better empathy. We have a better understanding of where people are coming from and why they may be thinking the way they are or feeling the way they are and what's happening in our community, which will help us move forward and grow to be a stronger community as well. We are really working to make sure that we're creating those spaces where everyone feels like they belong. So here's a difference when you say just welcoming or belonging. When you talk about belonging, when you're welcomed somewhere, you walk in the door and they say, hey, how's it going? When you feel like you belong, you walk in the door, they know your name. When you don't show up for 2 or 3 days, they know you're not there, right? We want to create space and environments and communities that people feel like they belong. And this is where I think we work together, especially. Realtors are one of the first lines for that to happen, right? When somebody's moving into this area, they're bringing all their biases and all their baggage with them. And they're coming into this area and they're coming to find a home first. And a lot of times talking to realtors to do that. And how do we work together as a YMCA, as a community, as realtors to make sure that people feel welcome and they get the right resources that they need, right? They get the resources and they have options and access to those resources so that they can thrive in our community as well. If we just look at somebody walking in the door and just by the color of their skin say, you belong over here, then people are not going to thrive. And so we have to make sure that we're partnering, that we're working together. And one of the most important things to me for our YMCA as well is to look at our community and how rapidly it's changing. The demographics of our community are changing. The statistics say there's about 64 people each day moving into this area, right? That is 64 different people. There are more people on the census that are identifying as other or mixed now than ever before. There are communities that have been oppressed for years and years. It is not just something that we should do. It is something that we must do, is to get engaged and involved with this conversation and to make change happen. Our CEO recently said, as a YMCA movement, we strive to be for all the time. However, today, we're called upon to do more. We must demand a reality wherein one's race does not dictate one's health, longevity, safety, or well-being. This is how we work together. We have to do it in partnership. And I just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. Wonderful comments, and we appreciate your being here with us today. So we'll start now with some questions that were sent to us previously through the website. And we'll start with the first question that came in. And this says, is our local association and our NAR looking into ways to kick out members that are clearly in violation of the Code of Ethics? Part of this question of racism, but also the lack of professionalism we have as an industry and low standard we hold for our general membership. And so these questions came in over the website, and we've had some chance and opportunity to put together some extensive answers to these. So I'm going to take the first one and address that. The Code of Ethics, Article 10, this little book right here, deals with our Realtor Code of Ethics. And it's followed up and enforced by a much larger book right here, which is a Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual that we go by when the professional standards and grievance committees are so called and convened and due process is in order. So I want to just talk a minute about some of these things. The Code of Ethics, Article 10 states that realtors shall not deny equal professional services to any person for reasons of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Realtors shall not be parties to any plan or agreement to discriminate against a person or persons on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And that was amended in January of 2014. Realtors in their real estate employment practices shall not discriminate against any person or persons on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Again, January 2014. The best way to hold people accountable is to report people to the association. If someone is refusing to follow the rules, they should be held accountable. We have traditionally had an issue with people turning in these individuals, and perhaps now is the time to hold people to the rules. If a realtor has an ethics complaint filed against them, either by another realtor, a member of the general public, or the association, and is found guilty of that violation after going through the authorized steps of grievance and professional standards panels, the Manual for Professional Standards Procedure authorizes the Professional Standards Committee and ultimately the Board of Directors the ability to impose punishment ranging from seeking required education, monetary fines, and penalties, including suspension and expulsion from the association. It is important to note that these complaints must be filed in the authorized procedure. Both RAR and NC Realtors have extensive information about how to file a professional standards complaint. We encourage everyone to review this on the Raleigh Regional Association website, rar.com/realtor-realtors/professional standards. And Andrew will post these on the comments for everyone, these websites, so that everyone will have them. And there's another one, www.ncrealtors.org/business-center/ under the Resolve tab. Additionally, RAR leadership and staff is looking into creating a more direct channel for members to report information regarding such things as racist or hate speech and other harassment in the workplace. And we're talking about Article 10, which I've just read to you. We also need to be very careful that when we file a complaint or a grievance, that we're dealing with facts. So there are two things that also are compliant with regard to the Code of Ethics. Article 14, if charged with unethical practice or asked to present evidence or to cooperate in any other way in any professional standards proceeding or investigation, the realtor shall place all pertinent facts before the proper tribunal of the member board or affiliated institute, society, or council in which membership is held, and shall take no action to disrupt or obstruct such practices. So it's incumbent upon us, if we're going to file a complaint or a grievance against someone, that we deal purely in facts, not conjecture, not hearsay. Also, Article 15, realtors shall not knowingly or recklessly make false or misleading statements about other real estate professionals, their businesses, or their business practices. Once again, I would encourage all of us to remember that we are to treat others as we would like to be treated ourselves, and that is with dignity and respect. So I would move on now to Larry. Please field question number 2 for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lewis. The second question that came in, or another question that came in, was why are some agents fired for social media posts while their broker is able to continue or even after they have shown to have some racist thoughts? And to respond to that, just to be clear, the association has no internal matters, has no say in internal matters of a brokerage and their company. So we cannot speak for them from an organizational perspective. And also the licensing law violations are handled strictly by NCR and not the association. I would like to say too that we are here as an association to partner with and collaborate with and offer training to firms, the firms within our association, as well as members, in the areas of diversity and inclusion, which will hopefully shed some additional light and clarity on what we mean or what needs to be done within organizations to improve their understanding of what implicit bias is. Also, I'd like to add that, however, all realtors and their companies should be adhering to the Code of Ethics, Article 10 that Lewis just so elaborately discussed, which does fall under the jurisdiction of the association. And if a broker and or their agent is not adhering to the Code of Ethics, Article 10, or any article in the code for that matter, then it is the obligation of us, our realtor communities and members in our community and or the public to file an ethics complaint against the parties involved using the proper procedures. So I want to again re-emphasize the point that that Lewis made, as well as what was made in answering this question, is that we do have the Code of Ethics that we all adhere to, and we're all expected to adhere to it. So now is the time when the rubber meets the road, to be accountable and to be responsible as realtors in adhering to our Code of Ethics. So with that question, I want to hand it back over to Lewis.
Thank you, Larry. Another question that came in is this: why haven't individuals lost their real estate license given that they broke with the NAR Code of Ethics? Discrimination and blatant racism from brokers and agents should be dealt with accordingly in our profession. So we'll attempt to address that for you. License law and violations of the Code of Ethics are two different things, and one does not automatically initiate the other as far as a response. If a realtor or broker is believed to have violated Article 10 of the Code of Ethics or any other article of the code, they should be held accountable using the prescribed procedures of the NAR Professional Standards and Arbitration Manual, that which I showed you a while ago. There is due process that must be followed. Any realtor member or member of the public can initiate an ethics violation complaint. However, most never do. That is something that needs to improve. We encourage everyone to review this information and the procedure. Again, a website, www.rrr.com/realtors-realtors/professional standards.
I do have it.
Then,
I have that in the chat just so people have it.
okay. Andrew's going to put all of these in the chat, so they're long. And then there's also www.ncrealtors.org/business-center/. And that's under the Resolve tab. Currently, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is looking into strengthening their position against racist and discriminatory behavior. They recently issued a statement pledging a zero tolerance policy. And again, you can look that up under www.ncrec.gov/resources/racial equality. When it comes to this behavior, for those seeking the file license law violations, please visit www.ncrec.gov/complaint form. These are available on the Real Estate Commission website. And knowing a lot of these individuals personally, I will tell you that each one is investigated. You do not want to get the brown envelope in the mail. So Larry, please pick up again.
Thank you, Lewis. Next question that came in is, what are the possible penalties, repercussions for real estate agents that post racist statements on social media or make racist statements to potential buyers/sellers? And I just want to read the response directly here because it's a lengthy discussion here and it might open up some discussion points. But again, as answered above, when it comes to action that can be taken by the association, there's a process for dealing with violations of the NAR Code of Ethics that must be adhered to. to legally or ensure due process is provided by complaint and respondent. And to that point, we just recently have had CE courses that describe the process. And I think it behooves us as realtors to be aware of that process and to use the process that's in place. And then also to be at the table to make changes to that process if necessary, at least give ideas. And if someone is found to have violated an article of code, then the punishment can be as follows, as authorized by NAR professional standards in the arbitration manual. A, requirement that a member attend the ethics portion of the board indoctrination course or other appropriate course or seminar specified by the hearing panel, which the respondent could reasonably attend, taking into consideration cost, location, and duration. Second, appropriate and reasonable fine not to exceed $15,000, and this is revised as of 5/13. Third, membership of individuals suspended for a stated period, not less than 30 days, nor more than 1 year, with automatic reinstatement of membership in good standing at the end of the specified period of suspension. The directors may order suspension unconditionally, or they may, at their discretion, give the disciplined member the option of paying to the board within a specific period of time, as the director shall designate, an assessment in the amount fixed by the directors, which may not exceed $15,000, and which can be utilized only once in any 3-year period. In lieu of accepting suspension, but if the conduct for which the suspension is ordered consists of failure to submit the dispute to arbitration, the directors may not permit the disciplined board member, but I should say the disciplined member, to void suspension without submitting it to the arbitration, in addition to paying the assessment, unless in the meantime the dispute has been submitted to the court of law without any objection by any party that shall be arbitrated. And this was revised 11/13. Again, this is part of the discussion that we had during CE. And I point back to the Code of Ethics as something that we have to take ownership of as we conduct our business. Expulsion of an individual from membership with no reinstatement privilege for a specified period of time is 1 to 3 years with the reinstatement of membership to be applied only after a specified period of expulsion on the merits of the application at the time received. Again, that was revised in 496. This was a very long answer, I should say, and it's something that maybe we can post on a page on the association's website, just for those that want to come back and revisit this question.
Thank you, Larry.
Go ahead, Louis.
Thank you again. The next question I would like to address to President Vince Malta. Vince, you had mentioned earlier in your introductory remarks the term redlining. So this question came up, which is, how can the effects of redlining and cultural bias be seen in today's real estate market? When we know how this affects our industry and marketplace, we can help get rid of it. Thoughts on these challenges?
So today, redlining is not as blatant as it was back in the 40s and the 50s when there were no loans available to GIs, African-American GIs coming back, or where they would buy in their communities. That was obvious stuff, or they wouldn't lend in certain areas, etc. Blockbusting was another thing that was done. All those they're obvious. Less obvious today is policies that have the effect of redlining. And so we should always be vigilant that we make sure that we look at these effects and how we're having lending policies, even credit scoring, charging more for people that have a certain score based on risk, could have the effect of what we're talking about. So we should always be vigilant as an industry and look at our own practices as to what we're doing. That's why I encourage people to look at that implicit bias. We have to be more than words. We've come out with a lot of strong words, which is wonderful, but we're not Starbucks. People sit down and have their caramel macchiato and they could feel good that Starbucks says Black Lives Matter, okay? We live this. We are not gatekeepers of the American dream. We help people attain and facilitate that and our work in our community. So in a sense, we're all active participants and need to remain so. And that's how you're going to vanquish redlining and stuff, by our own practices and ourselves as a local, state, and national organization to make sure we're vigilant on policies that have the effect of redlining.
Thank you, Vince. Larry, will you pick up question 6, please?
I will. And before I jump right into question number 6, I just let all the attendees know that the questions that have been posted in the chat box, we're going to, our goal here is to address as many of the questions that come to our attention during this call. However, we do have, as a follow-up to this, on July 23rd, so the question that you post will not be lost. And it's important that we continue this open dialogue with all our members. So continue to post your questions, please. Number 6 is a town hall / training / designation. All are weak responses to issues without visible change to executive leadership. Women's rights and LGBTQ are also very different from issues affecting African Americans. So I think I want to answer that reading directly from the response to those, but I think it also kind of dovetails with what Vince had just said. We believe that across the world, businesses and organizations are finding their way to effectively and intentionally find out what is a productive venue for discussions to take place. We very quickly wanted to listen before acting, which is the purpose of this first town hall. We wanted to learn before forming opinions, and we wanted to help people express what they needed to say and feel heard before we began assuming that we knew what was needed and what we needed to do in order to act. What may seem a weak response to some is actually very helpful and encouraging to others. This is actually the only, so to that point, our goal here, as well as going into our next town hall, is to keep an open and have an open floor, an open environment for people, for our members to express their concerns, and also how we can then formulate and plan training and equip our agents, our realtors, with the tools necessary. We will continue to leave this portal open, that's the question portal, for people to provide feedback on and to continue and plan on these conversations. Additionally, we are looking to assist our brokerages and companies in finding facilitators to help in diversity and inclusion training, and are excited about that prospect. So that's the last of the questions that we had that came in over the portal for this town hall. However, there have been questions that have popped up that members have submitted over the chat. So the next minutes, I should say, however long we can go, okay, we'll spend in kind of a roundtable Q&A discussion. So with that, maybe we can start the discussion off with a question that came in. For Vince, and that was, if you know, what is the percentage, percentage of states that have diversity committees at a state level?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know that answer, but I applaud you for having it. We're finding that more people are requesting it now, and they're looking for templates as to how to get that started. So that is wonderful. Every week now, given the COVID-19 situation, we are meeting with our state association executives again weekly, and that's been something that's been great. So this will really further that discussion to make sure that is happening. And this is also happening, of course, at the local level, and we're seeing more of those chapters where committees started at the local level. So very encouraging time. And the other thing I'd like to point out here, with the National Association of Realtors, we have what's called a strategic thinking group. And that strategic thinking group I will be talking with tomorrow, and we're going to make a complete pivot as to making sure that in our strategic priorities as we move forward, that inclusion, the discrimination issues that face our industry, that NAR and our state and local associations will be leaders as we continue on through this. So we've done a pivot, and I think you'll see that if we don't have an adequate number now, I'd like to see what that number is going to be next year.
Thank you, Vince. And I see an opportunity with that answer too, because one thing that came out was a template for diversity committees. You know, we've been doing this for a number of years, so maybe we can help out as an organization with that.
Wonderful.
Another question that came in is directed to Asa. Asa Fleming. What happened after the Mosaic Conference?
And I don't know if are they saying like what became of it, or
I think maybe the follow. You know, what were the next steps?
Oh, so that was supposed to be the very first diversity conference where you would come together, feel it out, have the difficult conversation, and then have some learning and takeaways from that conference to how we proceed further. And so, you know, that was something that they were going to do. This year's committee was going to look at it again. Obviously, you know, COVID-19 has just wrecked everything right now. They're trying to figure out, you know, how to move forward with it. But, you know, one of the things in my initial comments, you know, I was trying to make sure people understood was that, you know, when I first got here, the emphasis was on just getting engaged, right? Because the perception was, hey, we don't feel like we belong. And then when I was chairing the state level, it was more like, let's try to get them to accept diversity, you know, as not being just black and white. You know, so the thing there, if people can remember, was diversity. The color of diversity is green, right? And now how much of it you're not, you know, realizing by not being as diverse and as inclusive as you can in your business practices and in your life. And then so the mosaic, the whole purpose of the mosaic was to bring everybody together from all different walks of life, which we had all different types. From all different walks of life, and get them in the room having that difficult conversation about the various implicit biases after hearing how people had different views, you know, with Michael Fosberg, and hearing a panel of a gay agent, Asian American agent, and a black agent, and then, you know, just getting into that room and having that conversation. The experiment was to see what would happen after that. And that's why I said after that we had a wine and cheese. We thought everybody would be like, okay, that was horrible. You know, all that bickering and, you know, heated discussion. We're leaving. No, everybody stayed, still kind of talked about it, had learning and takeaways from it. Now, for our next one that we're trying to do, yeah, there were some learning and takeaways. Maybe there was some facilitation that should have been done differently. Anthony Lindsay was our facilitator. And the one that I was telling you about, I did the, you know, I'm a gay man, but I'm not a drag queen. You know, that facilitation of that was done by Willie Stewart, who owns Stewart Engineering here in Raleigh. But phenomenal sessions. I think what we're looking to do next is have something similar, a little bit more, you know, time allotted for that conversation, because we think that's where a lot of the learning occurred. And to see let's just say that wine and cheese that we had after was a microcosm of what could happen in this industry. I do see people, you know, wanting to belong and just say, hey, I'm a realtor, you know, instead of saying, hey, I'm an Asian realtor, I'm a, you know, African-American realtor or whatever. I'm a realtor. I think we can that's something I think that's achievable.
Thank you, Asa, for that answer. In fact, you did answer another question that came across, and that was, who were the facilitators? So thank you. The next question is directed to Vince. And this has to do with New York fair housing violations that were featured in the news and nationwide. And the question is, what can you share? Can you share what NAR is doing in order to dismantle the discriminatory behavior? And I'm going to, it says specifically in that area, but I want to broaden it, right? Because I don't think that New York is a one-off, right? So, so what is NAR doing in this case to dismantle the discriminatory behavior?
So this is a priority of 2020, number one. Number two, we created the ACT program, that accountability, cultural change training thing that I talked about earlier, to make sure that 1.4 million realtors are committed to fair housing. And let me just say very simply, and so that would create, we're looking to impose and create state model laws for that, increased training, working with HUD together. But that implicit bias video that I talked about, please take a look at that, because it's very easy to talk about overt discrimination, as I said earlier. Very easy to, and we don't do that, right? Mm-hmm. But bias, that's what that was all about. People may have been well-intended. They don't even realize sometimes what they're doing has really huge impacts on people. So we know what not to say, but it's time to have a discussion as to what we should and must be saying regarding bias and creating the protocols necessary. And that is a start. And from that, we're going to have training relating to that, and it's something that's going to be ongoing. So really, again, encourage people to look at that implicit bias video. And it was an eye-opener for me, and I highly recommend it.
So if I may, Larry.
Yes.
I want to address this question to Yo. Yo, can you share with us how company policies can be written that create not just diversity, but power holding inclusion that welcome all nationalities?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. I saw that one in the chat too. So I think there's several different ways. One is we have to start talking to our communities that have been marginalized, right? We have to start asking their opinion and their direction on how we should move as well. So when we start including all of the voices into the conversation before we make decisions, then power shifts and change starts happening, because now you're seeing a community that they know what's best for them, right? The community that we're talking about, the marginalized community, they know what's best for them and what they need in their community, and they're able to voice some of that. How do we write actual policies? We sit down and we start writing policies with that bias in mind. We start writing policies with intersectionality in mind as well. As you talk about LGBTQ, women, and so forth, when you look at that and then you underline that with race, when you talk about there's disadvantages and marginalized and disparities for LGBTQ and women, but when you talk about women or Black LGBTQ members, then the disparity grows even more, right? So how are we making sure that we're including those voices in the conversation as we're deciding what direction should we go and what do we need? We also need to remember that as we are building policies, there are just different life experiences and different perspectives that people are coming from. And so as we're doing that and we're having these conversations and talking to people, those are going to come out as well so that we understand where we go. The last part to that too is twofold. Is one, we have to look at our history. We have to look at our history and Vince talked about this earlier in redlining, right? We have to look at our history, and then we have to look at the ripple effects that happen from our history as well. You're talking about redlining, and there was a recent study that talked about 3 out of 4 neighborhoods redlined are still seeing effects and struggling economically because of that. And so how do we start taking action to dismantle some of the systems that are in play, right? Because if we keep dealing with one individual, one person, one scenario at a time, we're never going to actually make change, lasting change happen. We have to start looking at the systems that are in place, the systems that are happening, and the ripples that come from those systems to be able to start dismantling the systems and rebuilding them in a way that that builds equity amongst all. I don't know if I fully answered your question. I don't know if there's an actual formula to creating some of those policies, but I think one of the biggest thing is making sure that we have the right voices at the table when we're making those decisions.
Thank you, Yo. We're looking back through the questions.
Hey, and Lewis, let me add one thing while you're
Sure.
looking for that next question too, is I think as people are looking at, and you may be getting here, and I apologize because I'm gonna have to jump off in just a minute, but as people are looking at what is my role, right? What is my individual role in all of this? We can sit here and go, an association or organization needs to set some rules, but as an individual, I need to figure out what my place is and what my role is too. Solidarity is a great strategy, but you got to partner that with action as well. And it needs to be holistic action. Like, we should not be going, hey, I have a black friend, let me ask him all the questions I ever had about race and so forth. I should be, yes, spending time with people that have different perspectives than me, to learn, to listen and learn from them, 1. 2, I should be doing my own research. I should be going online and finding there. Gone is the day that it's hard to find information. Filtering what's right and what's not is a little different, but we should be going on and looking at that and finding information as well. We should also be looking at ways that we can, experimenting in trainings and education that we can do individually that will help us understand our biases as well. Biases come from how we're wired. Right? Biases, we get about 40 billion bits of information per second in our world around us. Our brains are not wired to take all of those and deal with them individually. Our brains are wired to group things together and categorize them so that we can come back to them as we go, right? That's where biases end up coming from. It's the marketing that you watch on TV. It's the person that you had a conversation with. It's the experience that you had with someone else. All of those things factor in to your biases and the bits of information that you're pulling in as your brain starts building these categories. So don't think you're good or bad because you have biases. Bias is just a natural part of how we're wired. And we have to understand that to be able to move past and to be able to look at those to slow down enough to disrupt our biases as well.
Thank you, Yo. Appreciate your insight on that. There was a question presented to me. It said, our professional standards committee doesn't offer classes to train and educate members, and there's a period. I believe making a policy change that including fair housing training and new member orientation would begin tackling this matter. Can we make fair housing training as part of the new member orientation? Well, federal fair housing is part of the new orientation, new member orientation. And as part of it, we do not devote an hour to it because of the time constraints involved in getting the new members oriented into the process. However, fair housing regulations and laws are covered through new member orientation. And it's up to also our brokerages to train folks on what federal fair housing laws are and how we are to participate in upholding and following those federal fair housing laws as we commit to our day-to-day practice. So part of that is on our association in our new member orientation, but equally, and as perhaps even a bigger part, would be taking it back to our brokers in charge to make sure that all of our members are trained and oriented in federal fair housing laws and how we are to treat other people. So thank you again for that, Yo, on your comments previously.
Hey, Lewis, let me also, there's a, just want to mention something that's posted on the, posted in the chat, that our RAR is hosting an at-home with diversity course. This is a CE course that will be available on September 23rd. And the at-home with diversity is a NAR certification program designed to present a picture of the changing face of the real estate industry. The at-home diversity course addresses the topic of diversity, fair housing, and business planning development. So to that point, you know, the action is being done, right? Giving our membership the tools, right, in order to for us to better deal with this. So go ahead, Lewis. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Yes, and I just asked for is there a charge for that class? I'm waiting on a response to that.
Yeah, so I'll do that really quickly, Lewis. The staff is going to be trying to explore some avenues to be able to try and cover the cost for that class for our members to be able to attend that and take advantage of that. So that's forthcoming. So trying to nail that down. But if people want to go ahead and register, even if they go ahead and register, we can work on the back end to get things situated.
Super. Thank you. I have another question for President Vince. When will NAR make a commitment to diversity and equity issues and equity issues a requirement for RPAC funding? Do we need to speak with our money?
I just sent a letter to Congress talking about NAR's commitment to the issues that we're talking about today. And there's a lot of legislation going towards that. So know that this is something that we're working in very aggressively in our advocacy level. Now, in relation to candidates, we don't take any bias towards political affiliations. We always say that we're the Realtor Party, so our color is purple in a sense. And so all of these decisions are made based on a person's, position on our industry issues that are very important. But we need to take into consideration all of these issues to make sure that we have proper representation across the board. And so we're hopeful that we're going to see more candidates of color as a result of this. We have seen more women candidates as a result of the movement that's occurred over the last several years as well. So I think this will be a very interesting time, and I think that NAR will be very progressive as the new political landscape shapes itself. But again, our focus will be on our industry issues and making sure that those candidates understand what those issues are and that they're well represent us as a nation.
Thank you, President Vince. Again, we want to be very cautious and respectful of everyone's time here today. So if there's another question that can be answered quickly, some of the questions that have been presented to us require very deep answers. And so we'll probably take a time to address those separately from this forum, but they will be addressed. So if you have another question for any of the panelists that are here that can be answered relatively quickly, then please type in your question in the participant chat box.
And just a reminder, President Grubbs, that if anybody after this call or in the weeks or to come have questions, follow-up questions to this, please feel free to use that web form on rrar.com/together. And you can use that form to send questions in, and we'll make sure the leadership team sees those. And just a reminder, this is being recorded, and we'll hope to have that on our YouTube channel tomorrow so that you can watch back through this, make notes, and if that spurs more questions, even better.
Thank you. And also, President Vince Malta has suggested that he is willing to stay after the session ends for any additional questions that may come up that he may be able to address online. And we appreciate that. And to our other panelists, we welcome you as well to stay and perhaps field questions that come out of the gallery. So we thank you for that, and thank you guys for being here with us today. I don't see additional questions coming through the feed at this point.
So I think we can go ahead and probably wrap up our town hall for today. If there are any objections, I would like to, first of all, as chair of the diversity committee, I want to say thank you all for everyone attending the call. Special thanks go out to Vince for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, as well as for Donnell for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, as well as for Yo for taking time out to join us in this in our first town hall. We will be doing this again on July, I believe it's July 23rd. So definitely stay tuned. I also want to point out one thing, that a couple of points that came out. One, Vince, you're right on that. The video on implicit bias is right on point, and I would encourage all of our community members to look at that video and to take it to heart. And then I think as a follow-on, that's kind of like a precursor to taking a class, right? So the syllabus says you need to take this class in order to get into the next class. I would say definitely take that class. The other point I want to bring out too is something that Yo pointed out. And for our realtor community, and this is, he pointed out there's 64 people coming into the area, into Raleigh or into Wake County every day. And, I think it was a very poignant point when he said that realtors, for many people, we are their first point of contact coming into the area. So understanding what I call my blind spots, which are also implicit biases, is extremely important with us supporting and providing the services that we provide to our clients, as well as to the community. This is beyond just clients. This is also community-based thing. And I also I had another point, and that is encouraging the conversation that came out. I forget who pointed that out, but encouraging the conversation with our staff, realtors, and within our firms. And the association is here to help engage and support that type of training and communication. So with that, I'm done. I can, Andrew, do you have any closing remarks to say? Louis?
Yeah, I want to follow up and just make mention of one other thing. A lot of things have happened over the last several weeks, some of which have prompted us to have this town hall today. But I would like to remind everyone that back in September, we had a strategic planning meeting where we put together a strategic plan for the next 2 years. And some of the issues that we've talked about today, we actually made a part of our strategic plan back in September and are carrying forth on these initiatives that we have put forward in our strategic plan. So a lot of what we have talked about today are focusing on our area of focus number 2 out of our strategic plan was our global business and how we can develop and grow our global business, and how we can emphasize inclusivity with regard to other cultures and other groups of people. Area of focus number 3, community development. And one of the objectives in that was to partner with local communities and organizations and help facilitate discussions on quality of life issues within our neighborhoods that includes, but is not limited to, housing access and affordability, food scarcity, healthcare, education, transportation, and entertainment initiatives. And then again, promote input from members and brokerages on how the association can make a larger impact in the communities that we live in and work in. And the 4th area of focus was association development. And that kind of brings everything together into how we as an association can help provide these things to our membership and grow together with you and to be able to provide a better service, more inclusive service, not just to our membership, but to our client base. And that is our first priority and to whom we owe fiduciary duty. So I want to thank everyone again for being here today. Know that this is something we've been working on for a while. And I will tell you that Andrew probably is tired of hearing me, because he and I speak on average 2 or 3 times a day, talking about different things, or he'll come up with an idea of something we may try, or I'll come up with an idea of something we may want to try. We have a few more things in the hopper that we haven't thrown out yet. So we're working on some projects, but I do want to thank everyone for your attendance today, for being here today, for participating today, and especially to our panelists. And thank you for being here. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us and to share.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Once again, we would encourage anyone who wants to hang around for a while, panelists, particularly you, and anyone who may want to throw a question out that can be answered relatively quickly, to hang out and join us. So thank you again, and this will conclude our formal presentation for the day.
Thank you.
Vince, just one thing. I know that one of the conversations that came up in the chat was regarding mortgages and mortgage applications, and some of the demographic questions that exist on some of these applications. And, you know, is there a thought, is there a thought that there could be a conversation with the Mortgage Bankers Association at some point to ensure that we're having these conversations there too?
So yeah, we're part of what's called the group, where we meet as an industry, all those groups, and we'll be having those discussions virtually. We will probably be meeting in the second week of July. And so yes, that's going to be a big topic of this conversation, because again, that's one piece, one very important piece of what we do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Trying to look back through. I know there was a comment that came in that was kind of a deeper question that I didn't really know the answer to, but kind of a NAR, NCR, RRAR type question, a position on the use of offer letters from buyers to sellers, especially the inclusion of photos which by their inclusion reveal a buyer's race and or a couple's gender makeup or sexual orientation, which might unintentionally lend itself to sellers choosing an offer based on race and or sexual orientation. Interesting question.
Yeah, it's not appropriate. It's our duty to point out to our clients what is permissible. And if they want to do it anyways, you can tell them, I can't participate in that type of activity. We have to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. They may want to know who's living in their home because, you know, is it 2 men, 2 women, black couple? Not appropriate, okay? We have to treat every offer fairly. It's part of our code of ethics. It's what we do. And by the way, some of this is just plain illegal. So again, that's part of our training and what we need to make sure that our agents are aware and they know of, as well as other practices that relate to this.
Thank you, Vince, for that answer. And I will tell you that our brokerage does not promote this at all. In fact, we discourage it, and we also teach that to the person who asked the question about the fair housing classes. I teach them for our firm, and when we talk about this issue, we firmly tell folks not to present these letters, not to encourage their folks to do that. And if it comes up, to do as Vince said, we do not participate in that, because in any given instance, with all innocence totally from a client, they could very easily violate a number of principles found in the federal fair housing laws.
Right. And you pointed it out earlier. It's our duty to point that out to people, okay? And, you know, it's one thing to file a code of ethics violation, but what I do is I represent my client. And what I tell them is, let's say I'm representing a buyer and that letter with the picture is asked for. I will contact that agent and say, that's not appropriate. That's unethical. That's illegal. Okay. Now I have that responsibility to point that out to you. Okay. So please drop that. If they don't drop it, I'm going to file the code of ethics thing. Yeah. Very painful for me in a small office. If that's a a huge brokerage office out there that I'm going against them. Very difficult. But look, we're only as good as our weakest link. Mm-hmm. And we all suffer from that. We all get put into that same pot. So, that's why it's so very important. Because earlier you talked about an industry that it all starts with us. It all starts with the individual, okay? And you don't wait for your industry to catch up. So it starts here.
Amen. I agree with that.
I'm going to have to jump off, but I wanted to say one thing. I'm going to put Asa on the spot, I think, for just a second. But I wanted to mention, too, when we're talking about systems of things, systems don't work independently in their own silos. They're connected, and we have to think through multiple systems of things as we go. And Asa, if you have a chance and are able to talk about the Southeast Raleigh Promise and the Y site that's going on, and how multiple systems have come together to look at and distributing power from your normal power players that would make decisions to the community that have made decisions on what needs to be in this community, in that Southeast Raleigh Promise community, and how that works across multiple systems of things, from education with a school to housing and healthy food and so forth. So I apologize, I'm dropping that bomb on you, Asa, and then I'm leaving. You can get me back later. Thank you guys very much. Have a good one.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So yeah, I know a lot of people are familiar with that project that are on the phone. For the, I guess, benefit of those who don't know, we did, that was a very diverse set of people that used intentionality to put a YMCA, a elementary school in the same building, okay, on the same property.
Wow.
And then also in a economically challenged area of town, okay, where the numbers just didn't work. Also a housing, affordable housing site on the site as well. It's part of a multi-site, but it's, site 3 in the back was all affordable housing. I think it was 140 units. And now we're working on the economic piece, the commercial piece, which will be on site 3 right next door to it. And what we call that entire site is the Beacon site. It was something where we wanted to address many different facets, as Yo was saying. We brought together all different types of people from the community, developer community. The YMCA had a group that said, okay, their board got involved, got different people from the community involved, mayors, former mayors. And we all put this together as a diverse group with as many different types of opinions and desires and wishes included as possible. And so it has been complete. It's a $40 million project. We've done it down there. It's now done. We had our first year. People are loving it. People are using the facilities. We are just about to start leasing out the affordable housing piece that's been completed. And so it is a success. It is serving as that beacon to bring economic affordability, housing affordability, economic opportunity, housing affordability to an economically impoverished area, and also serving as a model for how to work with diverse organizations and people that don't normally work together. I mean, you don't put a YMCA with the elementary school, right? But to address the certain needs, healthcare, health and wellness, education, leadership, etc., and housing, we were able to do that together. And that's the point of, I think, what Yo wanted to get across.
I have one more question for Vince. And, Vince, I think we're always trying to figure out how we as an association and as an organization can collaborate with our fellow AEs and other associations out there. What can you do to help us to make this what we've done today? Because what we've done today, I think, is a very powerful step in having conversations and answering questions live. And, obviously you being able to spend your time with us is hugely appreciated. But I think it's kind of like when you look at a disease infecting your body, you can't, when it's systemic, when it is a systemic problem, it requires more than just a shot in the leg. It requires more than just an injection somewhere. And we have to attack this from a systemic approach. So I think we're at a unique position, especially with you here. How can we share with our fellow presidents and other leadership that they need to be hosting these events as well?
Okay. So first of all, I'm a bad patient, but I will tell you this, that you first realize, you have to make the realization that you've got an issue. Okay. As much as I hate to admit it, I think that a lot of people would say, I'm not a racist. It's not a problem. Okay. That's really easy. Okay. To say that, and they move on and they feel offended. And I know of people that have been removed from their board of directors because they want to have this conversation. Okay. There are some people that contact me still that NAR should not have made a statement. They've never made a statement. That's not our lane. Stay in your lane. Okay. So number one, you got to realize you got the disease. Okay. You need something that needs treating. Now, fortunately, you in Raleigh, you've been dealing with that for quite a while through the awareness of what you're doing. But through our country, that's step one. Okay. The Newsday thing that came up was just as was brought up earlier, is just one example as to that. That's not what we do in our area. Well, so again, so that's step one. Two, having the conversation like you're having. Continue to have the conversation. It's up to us to work at all three levels. So it reinforces the local, state, and national level. That's the challenge, that we're saying the same thing, that we're providing a thread of a consistent message. And I think there's some very powerful things you could do at the local level, better than we could do at the national level, but we can provide you some basic tools to make sure that happens. And to make sure that it's ingrained in our training and what we do, because it's an evolving issue. Discrimination, bias, racism doesn't always look the same from one year, from 1 month to the next. So we need to make sure that we provide them what's going on and what we're doing to address it. And then that opens up the discussion as to what you could be doing. Again, those grants, those things are intended to bring your community together and to have those discussions, to work together for something positive for that. So sorry for a very lengthy answer for your question, but it's so multifaceted. It's just, there's no silver bullet when it comes to this issue. Okay. The worst thing that could happen is that this is no longer on the front page and no one, we're back to business as usual. And that's just not, it's not appropriate. And so we really need to be the leaders here. And that's what I believe at the national level. You've got a leadership that's committed to that for many years. That's the fortunate thing. We need to make sure that commitment, and I think you're doing that at Raleigh, which is incredible, and what you've done at the state, ASA and group, thank you for that. But it's a commitment.
Vince,
keep working on it.
Do you ever think there would be a reality where diversity, whether it be at home with diversity or some kind of training, would be a requirement the same that Code of Ethics is? Do you think there would ever be, because I've had that question asked a couple times, and I think Asa, that came up in our AEI talk, was whether there would ever be kind of a core standard or some kind of requirement passed down from the top that said, this is now part of our structural DNA, that in order to stay a realtor, to be a realtor, you must partake in this type of training.
Well,
do you want me to say yes or no? Carry that back.
To me, that's a very easy answer. Okay. The answer is yes. But the way it gets done is You're going to be surveyed, Andrew, as well as other AEs, regarding what should be a part of core standards, okay? Number one. And I know that people have different feelings about core standards of associations, et cetera. But this will be asked now in your survey. That's going to be included in the survey, okay? And the last point I'll bring up, our treasurer's going to hate me, but we don't need more realtors. We need better realtors, okay? If it comes down to that, and brokers don't like the fact that, NAR is making these more requirements on us, we've got to really look at what's our pillar. What is it that we really stand for? And isn't this it?
I love it. Amen. I appreciate it.
Hey, Vince, I've got one other quick question for you. And this is has to do with school report cards.
School what? I'm sorry, report cards?
School report cards, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, the report cards that get published for schools tend to provide a red line of sorts of how they can be, because it's how that data is being used. They'll say if my school is in this area and they're all A's versus over here they're all C's, the gravity is going to pull folks to the A's, which may not necessarily be an equitable distribution, et cetera. So is NAR having any input on how school report cards?
So, not that I'm aware of. I think that'd be a novel concept, but I will say this. Many years ago, I think it was 1992, we have a thing called Board of Choice, okay? And so I think there are ways that local associations can distinguish themselves as to what they're doing and what they can offer their members. So I think that's a very interesting concept. We typically don't pit one association at the national level with each other. I think it's a very sensitive issue. But again, I think that doesn't mean that you as an association can't talk about and grade yourself as to how you're doing in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting concept.
Okay. Thank you.
Asa, anything else?
I would just
Asa, good to see you as always.
Yeah, always good to see you.
It's going to be a while, so this is it, Asa.
Let me tell you something. I commend you for doing what you're doing this year, man. Nobody saw this coming, and the way you're handling it is you're doing a yeoman's job. Thank
you. Look, we're all a team, and thank you for what you're doing at the local level, state level. I mean, they're all doing it. I'm so proud right now of how, if anyone heard Ken Burns' talk yesterday in relation to our Hall of Fame, the one thing he said about people in America, what really will we be remembered for? And it's the way that we were able to improvise. Why jazz is so fundamental, and our Constitution. Look how we adapted. Realtors have really shown their adaptability and resilience this year. Phenomenal. So very proud of that.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'd like to take an opportunity on behalf of our association to thank President Vince Malta for being here with us today, and to thank you, Asa, for being here with us today and sharing your home folks. So we're always glad to see you. And I also just like to remind everyone that as we're talking about this subject, we all need to have those delicate conversations, those difficult conversations. But a thought just came to my mind that no matter who we are, as we look around our room today, the blood in my veins is the same as the blood in your veins, and is derived from the same Almighty Parent. That makes me no better than anyone else. And so I would encourage everyone as we leave today, be kind to each other and treat each other with respect and dignity. And I want to thank everybody that's here as a participant today to come back on July 23rd for our next event. And hopefully we'll learn from this one and maybe even run a little smoother next time. Who knows?
I thought it went well. And just so folks know, we're going to be looking to try and get some folks from the NCREC in here, because they did make a statement as well, and we'd like to get their input as well on what the Real Estate Commission is going to be doing in this regard too. So definitely worth your while to come back in July. So thanks again, Vince, Asa, and we'll have to say thank you to Donnell after the fact, but appreciated him as well.
And thank you, Larry, for being co-host.
Yes.
Everybody for helping.
Thank you all.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
All right.